What would you do if a stranger offered to erase your family's crushing debt? But the price was marrying them, no questions asked. In the sleepy black town of Pine Hollow, Georgia, where secrets simmer beneath the pines and gospel hums through the air, Jamal Washington faces that very choice. A 27-year-old mechanic with grease on his hands and dreams on hold. He's had a dying father, a mountain of bills, and a mysterious widow named Odessa Brooks whispering promises too good to be true. Is she his savior, or the shadow ready to drag him into a past he never knew? Buckle up for a tale of betrayal, revenge, and redemption that'll keep you guessing till the last page. Hey, if you're ready to dive into this wild ride with me, hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way to keep up with every twist and turn. Let's roll into Pine Hollow together. The late afternoon sun dipped low over Pine Hollow, a small black town nestled in the rolling hills of rural Georgia, casting a faint golden glow across the cracked asphalt streets. A steady rain tapped against the rusted tin roof of Jamal Washington's auto shop, a squat brick building perched on the town's edge, its faded sign, Washington's Repairs, peeling in the damp air. Inside, the sharp tang of gasoline mingled with the earthy musk of wet soil, a familiar scent that clung to Jamal's clothes as he hunched over the open hood of an old Chevy Impala. His dark hands, calloused and slick with oil, gripped a wrench, wrestling with a stubborn alternator that refused to budge. Aretha Franklin's gospel spilled from a beat-up radio on the workbench, her voice soaring through amazing grace, a fleeting balm against the grind of the day. But Jamal's mind wasn't on the music or the car. It was tangled in the mess of his life, a knot he couldn't seem to unravel. At 27, Jamal had grown up harder than most in Pine Hollow. The shop was his lifeline, a gritty little haven where he fixed cars for folks too broke to hit the big garages in Macon. He learned the trade young, hands steady on a wrench by 16, taught by an uncle who'd long since moved on. It kept the lights on in their crumbling shotgun house 2 streets over, put collard greens and cornbread on the table, but it couldn't touch the $200,000 debt that loomed over them like a storm cloud ready to burst. That burden came from his daddy, Marvin, a man with big dreams and bigger failures. Barbershops had been Marvin's gamble. 3 of them, opened across the county over the years, each one a shot at lifting them out of the dirt. But bad luck and worse decisions piled up, and now the creditors were relentless, their calls a daily torment, threatening to snatch the house, the shop, every scrap they had left. Jamal locked up early that evening, the rain picking up as he stepped outside, the damp chill seeping through his faded blue overalls. He'd stopped by Miss Ella's Soul Kitchen on the way home, grabbing a foil pan of smothered pork chops, the smell of gravy and spices cutting through the wet air. Pine Hollow stretched out around him, porches sagging under years of neglect, kids darting between houses despite the weather, the faint hum of gospel drifting from open windows. His own house came into view, a narrow box of weathered wood and peeling paint, its roof patched too many times to count. Inside, Marvin sat at the kitchen table, a mess of bills scattered like fallen leaves across the scarred surface. A deep, wet cough tore through him as Jamal stepped in, the sound rattling the quiet, his daddy's frail frame hunched under a threadbare sweater. "You don't have to keep doing this, son," Marvin rasped, his voice rough as gravel, nodding at the foil pan as Jamal set it down. His eyes were sunken, tired from too many sleepless nights, the lines on his face etched deeper by shame and sickness. Jamal pulled up a chair, the wood creaking under his weight, and forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I don't blame you, Daddy. Never did. Just want to see you rest easy for once, that's all." He slid a plate toward Marvin, piling it with chops and a hunk of cornbread, watching as his daddy's trembling hand reached for a fork. "Ain't your fault them shops went under. Life just hit us hard." Marvin shook his head slow, a cough cutting him off before he could argue. "Should have been smarter," he managed, voice fading. "Left you with this mess." Jamal gripped his daddy's hand, warm but weak, feeling the ache of it twist in his chest. "We'll get through. Always do." They ate in silence, the clink of forks against plates mixing with the rain outside, a rhythm that felt both comforting and heavy. He'd trade anything to lift that weight off Marvin's shoulders, to see him smile without the shadow of debt pressing him down. Atlanta had been Jamal's dream once. A real garage with a neon sign blazing his name, a crew of his own. But every time he let himself imagine it, Marvin's cough pulled him back. He couldn't leave, not now. The next morning, back at the shop, the rain pounded harder, a steady drumbeat against the tin roof as Aretha's Precious Lord filled the air with its mournful hope. Jamal was elbow-deep in the Chevy, sweat beading on his dark skin despite the chill, when a loud bang rattled the door, sharp and sudden. He straightened, wrench in hand, as a hulking figure in a leather jacket loomed outside, yelling through the glass. "Washington, time's up, $200,000, or I'm talking this dump in your house next." The guy's voice was gravelly, his fists slamming the frame again, rattling the whole shop. Jamal stepped forward, shoulders squared, wiping grease on his overalls. "You'll get your money," he said, voice low and steady, though his pulse raced. "Now, get out of here for I make you." The guy smirked, spat on the wet ground, and lumbered off into the rain, but the threat lingered, thick as the humidity. Jamal exhaled, shaking his head, when his phone buzzed on the workbench, an unknown number flashing on the cracked screen. He grabbed it, still keyed up. "Yeah." A woman's voice came through, deep and commanding, like someone who'd once held Pine Hollow in her grip. "Jamal Washington? This is Odessa Brooks. I know you, and I got something you need. Meet me at Miss Ella's tonight, 6 p.m., don't be late." The line clicked dead before he could get a word in. Jamal stared at the phone, brow furrowing under his ball cap. Odessa Brooks? Pine Hollow was tight. Everybody knew the deacons at First Baptist, the hustlers on the corner, the kids selling lemonade in the summer heat. But her name didn't ring a bell. How'd she know him? He shook it off, figuring it for some scam, but that voice, cool, unshakable, carrying the weight of years, stuck with him, sharp and insistent. By 6 o'clock, he'd locked the shop and walked 3 blocks to Miss Ella's, rain soaking his work boots, the streets slick under the fading light. The diner glowed warm against the gray dusk, its yellow walls a beacon in the storm, the air inside thick with the sizzle of frying catfish, the sweet scent of baking cornbread, and the chatter of regulars rising over clinking plates. She sat in a corner booth, early 70s, gray hair swept into a tight bun, dark skin etched with lines of hard-earned survival. Her navy blazer hung crisp on her frame, a gold cross necklace catching the light. But her eyes, sharp like she'd seen the world burn and built it back from ash, held something heavy, something dangerous. "Sit," she said, her voice smooth as molasses but cutting like a blade through the hum of the diner. Jamal slid into the booth, sizing her up, his broad shoulders tense under his hoodie. She didn't waste a breath. "I know your daddy's debt, $200,000. I can wipe it clean. Set you up good, too." "How you know my business?" he asked, arms crossing over his chest, suspicion flaring hot. "Who are you?" She sipped her sweet tea, ice clinking in the glass, her face a mask of calm. "I got my ways. What matters is the offer. But there's a catch." "What catch?" His gut tightened, the air between him thickening. "Marry me," she said, eyes locking his unblinking. "Legal on paper. No love, just a signature. When I'm gone, everything I got is yours." Jamal's jaw dropped, a short laugh escaping before he could stop it. "You for real? I'm 27. You are what, 70-something? Why me?" 72, she corrected, cool as ice water running down his spine. "I need a husband. Young, no ties. You fit. It's a deal, plain and simple." His head spun, the diner's noise fading to a dull hum. A mechanic marrying some rich old lady he'd never met? Sounded like a fever dream or a hustle. But Marvin's cough echoed in his ears, the creditor's threat ringing fresh. "What's in it for you?" he pressed, leaning in, voice low and hard. "Something personal," she said flat and final, shutting him down like a door slamming in his face. "Sign the papers, live with me till I pass. That's it." Jamal left Miss Ella's that night, rain soaking his hoodie as he walked home slow, mind racing louder than the crickets chirping in the pines. He wasn't greedy. Hustle was in his blood, not gold digging. But this could save his daddy, lift that weight off both their shoulders, give Marvin a chance to breathe easy before the end. Still, Odessa's stare lingered, sharp and unreadable, a storm cloud he couldn't outrun. Was this a lifeline, or a noose waiting to tighten round his neck? Jamal didn't sleep a wink that night, the rain hammering the roof of the shotgun house like a fist pounding his conscience. He lay on his lumpy mattress, staring at the water stains creeping across the ceiling, Odessa's words looping in his head like a scratched record. Marry me. Everything's yours. A way out for Marvin, or a trap. His phone buzzed again at dawn, the screen lighting up the dark room with an unknown number. He snatched it up, heart thumping against his ribs. Change your mind, boy. Odessa's voice cut through, sharp and taunting, like she'd known he'd wrestle with it all night long. I need to hear it again, he said, sitting up, voice rough from exhaustion. You swear you'll clear the debt? All $200,000. Every dime, she replied, steady as a preacher on Sunday morning. Soon as we're married. Clock's ticking. He swallowed hard, the image of Marvin's frail frame burning behind his eyes, those sunken cheeks, that cough tearing through him. He said, the word heavy on his tongue. I'm in. She hung up without another word, leaving silence and a sinking feeling in his gut, like he'd just stepped off a ledge he couldn't see the bottom of. Days later, they stood in her plantation-style house on the edge of Pine Hollow, a relic of a bygone era with its wraparound porch sagging under the weight of time, its towering oaks draped in Spanish moss that swayed lazy in the breeze. The ceremony was quick and bare. No collard greens steaming in the kitchen, no peach cobbler cooling on the counter, no kinfolk clapping and hollering like at a real wedding. Just a notary in a cheap suit, two of Odessa's stern-faced friends in pressed blazers, and a maid named Miss Pearl who moved like a shadow, her eyes downcast as she handed over the pen. Jamal signed the marriage certificate, his hand steady but his chest tight, the ink drying fast on the page while Odessa watched with that cool, distant stare, her gold cross necklace glinting under the chandelier light like a silent warning. Word spread like wildfire through Pine Hollow, the gossip buzzing louder than a hornet's nest kicked over. Jamal done struck gold. Miss Ella chuckled over a skillet of hush puppies at her diner, shaking her head as she flipped him golden. He just want her money, grumbled old Mr. Jenkins from his barbershop chair, his scissors snipping through a fade as he muttered. She old enough to be his granny. What he thinkin'? Whispered the church ladies over their hymnals at First Baptist, their fans fluttering in the sticky heat. Jamal tuned it all out, jaw set tight as he hauled his duffel bag from the shotgun house to Odessa's place, the rain-soaked streets stretching out behind him like a memory he couldn't shake. This wasn't about love or riches. It was a lifeline, a way to save Marvin from the creditor's claws, nothing more. The next day, he moved in, leaving the sagging porch and peeling paint of his old life behind him. Odessa's house was something else. Polished hardwood floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen tears from the high ceilings. Walls lined with framed photos of folks he didn't recognize, all stiff and serious in black and white, their eyes staring out from another time. But it felt cold, like a church after the congregation's gone home, the air heavy with a silence that pressed down on him hard. No gospel music floating through the halls, no kids logging on the stairs. Just a hush broken only by the slow, steady tick of a grandfather clock in the foyer, its pendulum swinging like a heartbeat in the stillness. 3 staff moved through the place like ghosts. A cook who barely spoke, her hands quick over pots and pans. A gardener who kept his head down, clipping hedges in the sprawling yard beyond the windows. And Miss Pearl, who'd flicker in and out with a broom or a tray, then vanish into the shadows without a word. Odessa kept her distance, spending most of her time locked in a big office at the back of the house. The door always shut tight, a faint light seeping under it late into the night. They ate together some evenings, smothered pork chops, black-eyed peas, cornbread still warm from the skillet. But she wasn't one for small talk. She'd sit at the head of the long dining table, her posture straight as a rod, cutting her food with precision while Jamal poked at his plate, the silence stretching between him like a tightrope ready to snap. One night, after a week of this, Jamal couldn't take it no more. He set his fork down, the clink loud in the quiet, and leaned forward across the table. How come it's so dead round here? No family? No grandbabies running around making noise? Odessa paused, her fork halfway to her mouth, then set it down slow, deliberate, like she was measuring her next move. Her eyes turned to steel, glinting in the dim light of the chandelier overhead. "My folks are gone," she said, her voice low and hard. Each word weighted with something he couldn't place. "I once prayed to forget him, knelt every night asking God to take the pain away. But he let me remember. Do your part, Jamal. That's all you need to worry about." Her words hit him like a cold gust off the river, raising the hairs on his neck, sending a shiver down his spine. Gone how? Dead? Run off? He wanted to push, to crack that wall she'd built round herself brick by brick, but the way she stared, hard, unyielding, like she'd cut him down if he tried, told him to back off. He nodded, shoveling a bite of peas into his mouth to fill the silence. But the questions piled up like unpaid bills, heavy and insistent, gnawing at him in the quiet of that big, empty house. 10 days after the wedding, the truth came crashing down like a storm through the pines, tearing through the fragile calm Jamal had clung to. He sat at the dining table that evening, the air thick with the sweet, sticky smell of candied yams the cook had left out on the sideboard, a rare treat that did little to ease the tension coiling tight in his gut. Odessa sat across from him, sipping her tea slow and deliberate, her face colder than a Georgia winter, the lines around her mouth etched deep as if carved by years of unspoken rage. The chandelier above cast faint shadows across the room, flickering like ghosts on the polished wood, and the grandfather clock ticked on in the foyer, its rhythm steady but ominous now. She set her glass down, the ice clinking sharp in the stillness, and looked at him with those piercing eyes. "You in this life now," she said out of nowhere, her voice slicing through the quiet like a blade through silk. "Make it count." Jamal leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under him, unease twisting in his chest like a knot he couldn't untie. "What you mean by that?" he asked, his voice steady but his pulse quickening, thudding loud in his ears. She gave a thin smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, more menace than mirth, a predator baring its teeth slow and deliberate. "Why you think I picked you, Jamal?" she said, her tone low and taunting, each word dripping with something dark. "Out of all the souls in Pine Hollow." He shrugged, trying to keep it light, though his hands clenched into fists under the table, nails digging into his palms. "You needed a husband. I needed help. Simple as that." "Half right," she said, her voice dropping, even lower, almost a whisper now, heavy with a weight that pressed down on him like the humid air before a storm. "Your daddy, Marvin, he was a good man once. Till he crossed me bad." Jamal's chest tightened, his heart thumping against his ribs like a drumbeat he couldn't stop, loud and insistent. "What you talking about?" he said, his voice rising to spite himself, edged with a mix of confusion and dread. "He ran a barber shop. It went under. That's the story I know, the only one he ever told me." Odessa's eyes glinted like a blade catching the light, sharp and dangerous, cutting through the haze of his certainty. "You don't know nothing, boy," she hissed, her chair scrapping the floor as she stood, the sound jarring in the quiet room like a gunshot. She turned and walked out, her footsteps fading down the hall, leaving him sitting there alone, mind racing faster than a river in flood, questions piling up like debris in the current. That night, he couldn't let it rest, the unease burning too hot to ignore, a fire licking at his insides. He found Miss Pearl in the kitchen, scrubbing a pot over the sink, her apron stained with gravy from supper, the steam rising around her like a veil in the dim light. "Miss Pearl," he said, keeping his voice low, the hum of the fridge masking his words from the rest of the house. "What's her deal? Why's she so shut off like that? What'd she hide it?" She froze, her hands still in the soapy water, bubbles popping soft in the silence, then glanced round like she was scared someone, or something, might hear. "You shouldn't be his skin, Jamal," she whispered, her voice trembling at the edges, barely audible over the drip of the faucet. "But she had a family once. Husband, little girl. They gone now. Husband dead, girl lost. Folks who get close to her, they don't last long, not ever. Gone how? He pressed, stepping closer, his shadow fallon across the counter, loom in over her small frame. She shook her head quick, eyes dart into the door like she expected Odessa to materialize right there. I don't know the whole of it, she said, softer now, her hands starting to scrub again, slow and mechanical. Dead, maybe. Run off. Just watch yourself round her here. She got ghosts that don't rest easy, and they weigh on her something fierce. She turned back to the pot, scrubbing harder, her shoulders hunched tight, and Jamal knew he'd get no more out of her that night, no matter how hard he pushed. The next day, he couldn't sit still no more, the unease gnawing at him like a dog on a bone, relentless and sharp. He hopped in his beat-up Ford pickup, the engine sputtering to life with a groan, and drove into town, the pines whipping past in a blur of green and brown, their needles glistening with leftover rain. He tracked down Deacon Roy, an old barber who'd cut hair with Marvin back in the day, sitting on his porch with a glass of lemonade. The ice melting slow in the morning heat. Roy's face was lined deep, his hands steady from years with a razor, and he looked up as Jamal climbed the creaky steps. His boots thudded in on the wood. Deacon, Jamal said, sit on the edge of the porch, his voice tight with something close to desperation. Tell me about my daddy. Straight up, no sugar. I need the truth. Roy sighed deep, setting his glass down with a clink that echoed in the quiet, the sound sharp against the hum of cicadas in the trees. Marvin was slick, Jamal, he said, his tone heavy with memory, eyes far off like he was seeing it play out again. Good with folks, good with a razor, could talk a man out of his last dollar and make him smile about it, leave him Logan as they walked away. But he messed up bad. 30 years back, he teamed up with Odessa Brooks on a land deal, buying up plots for some big development, talking about houses and stores that had put Pine Hollow on the map, make us something more than a dot on the highway. She had money then, husband, daughter, a fine house up on the hill, all of it picture perfect. Marvin cooked the books, pocketed the profits, left her high and dry when it all fell apart. She lost everything. House, savings, every dime they'd built. Her man hung himself in their barn, couldn't take the shame of it, couldn't face her after. Daughter up and vanished, ain't been seen since. Not a letter, not a call, just gone like smoke. Jamal's stomach dropped like a stone, the air feeling thick and hard to breathe, his hands gripping the porch rail till his knuckles whitened. So she married me. To get back at him? He said, voice low, the words tasting bitter as they left his mouth. Roy nodded slow, his eyes heavy with pity, the kind that comes from seeing too much and saying too little till now. Seems so, son, he said, leaning back in his chair. She'd been holding that hurt a long time, letting it fester till it's all she's got left. Be careful. She ain't the forgiving kind, and she don't let go easy. Back at the house that afternoon, Jamal's blood was boiling, the pieces snapping together in his head like a puzzle he wished he'd never touched, each one sharper than the last. He stormed into Odessa's office, the door creaking loud as he pushed it open, the air inside thick with the smell of old paper and polish. He started riffling through the papers he'd signed, his hands shaking with a mix of rage and fear, fingers fumbling over the pages till the words finally made sense. There it was, buried in the fine print like a snake in the grass. Not just her assets, but a fake $500,000 debt pinned on his name, a noose tightened round his neck while he'd been looking the other way. She'd taken Marvin's mess and turned it into Jamal's own personal hell, a trap so tight he could feel it squeezing the life out of him, stealing the air from his lungs. You figured it out. Odessa's voice cut through the silence, sharp and cold as a winter wind whipping through the pines. He spun round. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, her face calm as death itself, no trace of guilt or regret in her eyes, just a quiet, burning fury. What you do to me? Jamal yelled, fists balled up tight, the papers crumpling in his grip as he stepped toward her, his voice echoing off the bookshelves. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stepped closer, her smile slithering across her face like a snake on the move, slow and deliberate. I gave you what your daddy gave me. Nothing, she said, her voice low and venomous. each word a dagger twisting deeper. I hear the wind in that barn still, Jamal, 30 years on. The rope creaking as my husband swung, his boots dangling like a broke promise, his face gone gray for I could cut him down. My girl ran, no goodbye, no note, just gone like I never mattered. I clawed back from dirt, built this with my own hands, every brick, every dollar. Now you'll feel it, the weight of losing everything, the way it hollows you out till there's nothing left but the hurt. Odessa's words hit Jamal like a slap across the face, echoing the quiet office, each one a shard of glass digging into his chest. You've been holding this grudge 30 years, and I'm the one paying for it, he said, his voice trembling with fury, his fists clenching so tight his knuckles ached. Your daddy betrayed me, she snapped, her voice low and bitter, her eyes narrow into slits. Left me with ashes. My husband took his own life, found him swinging in that barn, rope creaking in the wind, his face purple and still. My baby girl ran off. Lord knows where, ain't sent a word since, like I was dead to her. I built myself back up from nothing, and now you gonna know that pain, Jamal, the kind that don't let go. He stared at the papers scattered on the desk, the $500,000 debt staring back like a death sentence, his breath coming fast and shallow, anger and fear mixed in his chest like oil and water. I ain't letting this stand, he said, his voice hard now, a fire lighting behind his eyes. You can't do me like this. Odessa laughed soft, a sound that chilled him to the bone, hollow and cruel. It's done. You signed, boy. Ain't no going back. A few nights back, he'd sat with Tyrone, his boy from way back, over beers on the shop stoop, the crickets singing in the dark. Tyrone, tall, wiry, with a law degree fresh from Macon, had leaned back, bottle in hand, and said, "Watch them sweet deals, bruh. Folks don't give nothing for free round here." Jamal had laughed it off then, but now those words rang true, sharp and urgent. He called Tyrone that night, slipping out of the house under the moon's watch, the pines whispering in the breeze as he paced the gravel lot. She played me, man, he said, voice shaken as he spilled it all. The marriage, the papers, the revenge twisting Odessa's heart. Tyrone sucked his teeth over the line, the sound sharp. That's dirty, bruh. If she switched them papers after you signed, that's fraud, straight up. You got proof. Jamal thought hard, passing a lot, his boots crunching on the stones. Her office got cameras. Little black ones in the corners saw him when I signed. If I can get the tape. Grab it, Tyrone said, voice firm, no hesitation. I'll back you up. Don't wait on this. She ain't playing. Under the cover of night, Jamal crept back into the house, the old boards creaking under his boots like they were trying to warn him. His heart thumped loud enough to wake the dead as he slipped into Odessa's office, the air thick with the smell of old paper and polish, the desk looming in the dark. He fumbled with her computer, sweat beading on his forehead, praying he could figure it out before she caught him. After tense minutes, his hands shaking over the keys, he found it, a video file dated the day he signed. He clicked play, holding his breath, the screen flickering into life. There he was, scratching his name on the papers, Odessa standing over him, her face blank. Then, clear as day, she waited till he left the room, pulled out a different stack from a drawer, and swapped him out, her movements quick and practiced. Proof caught on tape, undeniable. Gotcha, he muttered under his breath, yanking the USB free from the port, his pulse racing like a freight train. But as he turned, Odessa loomed in the doorway, her eyes blazing like coals in the dark, her silhouette sharp against the hall light. Thought you was slick? Huh, she said, her voice low and dangerous, a storm brewing in every word. I got proof, Jamal shot back, holding up the USB, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his throat. You're finished. She lunged, grabbing his arm with a grip like iron, her nails digging into his skin hard enough to draw blood. You ain't leaving with that, she hissed, her face inches from his, her breath hot and ragged. Two big dudes, her hired muscle, faces hard as stone, shoulders broad under their jackets, stepped up behind her, blocking the door like a wall of flesh and menace. Jamal yanked free, adrenaline pumping through him like fire, and bolted for the window, his only shot. He smashed through the glass, Shards exploding round him like jagged rain, his boots slamming into the wet grass outside as he landed hard, pain shooting up his leg like a knife twisting in his knee. The guards gave chase, their boots pounding the earth, their shouts cutting through the night, but Jamal stumbled forward, breath ragged, the gate just ahead in the moonlight. Headlights sliced through the dark. Tyrone's beat-up Dodge Ram roared up, 2 cop cars rolling in behind, their red and blue lights flashing against the pines. "Freeze!" An officer barked, flashlight sweeping the yard, catching Jamal in its beam as he staggered to a stop. Odessa stepped onto the porch, her face pale as the police swarmed in, badges glinting in the moonlight, her hands gripping the railing tight. "Y'all can't take this from me," she spat, her voice cracking with rage, her eyes misty, not from fear, but from the weight of losing the war she'd fought for 30 years. Tyrone jumped out of the truck, pulling Jamal up from the dirt, his grip strong and steady. "Knew she'd try something, bruh," he said, breathing hard. "Called the law soon as you went in. They got warrants. Her book's crooked as hell, man." The cops cuffed Odessa as she stood there, her shoulders slump in for the first time, the fight draining out of her. An officer turned to Jamal, holstering his gun, his face grim. "Found fake papers in her office. Fraud, money laundering, the works. Evidence is clear as day. She going down." Odessa's arrest lit up Pine Hollow like a 4th of July sparkler, the news spreading faster than gossip at Miss Ella's counter. The church ladies clucked over their sweet tea, shaking their heads at the fall of a woman they'd barely known. The barbershop buzzed with theories about her money and her hate, and Miss Ella herself said, quiet-like, "That woman been holding hate too long. Eats you up inside." Jamal spent weeks untangling himself from her mess, sitting in stuffy rooms with Tyrone and the cops, going over every paper, every lie she'd spun. The courts voided the fake debt, stripping away the chains she tried to lock him in, but the scars lingered, deep and raw, a reminder of how close he'd come to losing it all. A month later, he drove out to see Marvin, the shotgun house looking smaller now, the porch still creaking but the air lighter somehow. His daddy sat in his old chair, a blanket round his shoulders, the cough still there but softer, like the fight was easing out of him too. Jamal set a plate of cornbread on the table, sitting across from him, and said, "I'm studying law now, Daddy. Night classes in Macon. Gonna do right, make sure folks don't get caught like I did." Marvin looked up, his eyes wet but proud, and reached for Jamal's hand, squeezing it weak but firm. "You always been better than me, son," he rasped, a smile breaking through the weariness. "Keep going." Jamal couldn't hate Odessa. Not fully. Not after seeing the pain in her eyes that night, the way it had twisted her into something cold and hard over 30 years. She'd been broken by Marvin's greed, her life shattered in ways he could only imagine, and that hurt had festered till it swallowed her whole. He didn't excuse her, didn't forgive her for the trap she'd set, but he understood, and that understanding sat heavy on his chest, a weight he carried quiet. A year later, Jamal was deep in his classes, trading wrenches for textbooks, his hands more at home with a pen now than a socket wrench. He'd moved to a small apartment in Macon. The shop sold off to a cousin who'd keep it running. The money set in Marvin up with a nurse to watch him close. One morning, as he sat on the stoop with a cup of coffee, the mail brought a letter from the prison, the envelope stamped with her name in block letters. Odessa's handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged like she'd pressed too hard. "Live better than your daddy did." Jamal held the paper, staring at them words till they blurred, the weight of 'em sinking and slow. He folded it careful, tucking it into his pocket, and stepped off the stoop into the Georgia sun, the air warm and thick with the promise of spring, gospel drifting from a radio down the street. Mahalia Jackson this time, her voice rising strong and sure. Forgiveness wasn't for her. Not really. It was for him, a way to break the chains of hate she'd tried to lock him in, to let go of the past and step free. The lesson burned deep. Revenge didn't heal nothing. It just ate you hollow, left you empty as a dry well. He wouldn't let it define him, wouldn't let his daddy's mistakes, or Odessa's hate, steer his road no more. He walked down the street, past the corner where Miss Ella still stood, folks waving through the window as he passed. The The smell of barbecue drifting on the breeze mixed in with the sound of kids Logan somewhere close. Jamal smiled, small but real, the first one in a long time that felt like his own. He was free. Free to build something real, something that'd last. And he'd make damn sure he stayed that way. Lesson from the story. Every twist in The Mechanic and the Widow teaches us something real. Revenge might feel good for a minute, but it's a fire that burns you up inside, leaving nothing but ashes. Jamal Washington fought his way out of a trap built on 30 years of hate, showing us that holding on to grudges doesn't heal. It hollows. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about breaking free yourself, building something better from the wreckage. Life's too short to let the past steer your road. Take the wheel, like Jamal did, and drive toward a dawn worth chasing. Loved diving into Pine Hollow with Jamal in Odessa. There's plenty more where that came from. Follow and subscribe to Story Precious right now to catch the latest videos. Every tale's packed with twists, heart, and lessons you won't forget. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a drop. Join the crew at Story Precious, and let's keep the stories rolling.